One of the most important aspects of a well-written component is its exception handling. We have already covered exception handling as part of the layer pattern, but there are some best practices to employ when handling exceptions that weren't mentioned before. First, only catch exception if you have something to do with it. I often see code that catches exceptions and then simply writes the exception to a log and does nothing else with it. This is usually not a good way to handle exceptions, as this behavior can be achieved using a central exception handling mechanism such as filters in ASP.NET and does not require to have a try catch in every piece of code. If there is a specific action to be taken if an exception is thrown, such as rolling back a transaction or implementing some kind of retrieval algorithm or wrapping the exception in a different one, then it's a good idea to catch it. But other than that, it's better to avoid it. Second, always catch a specific exception. When catching an exception, you should be aware of what kind of exception to look for. For example, when working with databases, try to catch an SQL exception and handle it correctly. When you don't specify a specific exception to catch, you don't really know what you will get and may handle the exception in the wrong way. For example, if you work with a database and don't specify the exception type and simply assume that the exception is database related, you might encounter a different exception, say division by zero exception, that has nothing to do with the database action, and rolling back the transaction might not be a good idea. Third, use try catch on the smallest code fragment possible. More than once I saw methods that began with try and ended with catch, and the developer thinking this is the right way to handle exceptions. Well, this is wrong. Always use the try-catch mechanism on the smallest code fragment possible. If you have a line of code that accesses the database, surround it and only it with try-catch. If you have a line that divides a number with another one, try to catch a divide by zero exception. Always look at specific lines of code and examine what exceptions might be thrown from them, and catch those exceptions. Never surround large chunks of code with general unneeded exception handling.